The Ming Dynasty of China was one of the most prosperous and stable states in human history, lasting from 1368 to 1644. However, even the most stable state will one day come to an end. In this series on Chinese history, we will look at how the Ming Dynasty was conquered by the founders of the Qing Dynasty, the Manchu people from the north, and how this sparked 6 decades of war and chaos in China. In this first episode, we will cover the Jurchen people and its founder Nurhaci. We will follow him from his humble origins through his unification of the Jurchen and his enthronement as emperor of the later Qin in 1616. We will then see the start of his conflict against the Ming and the Battle of Sarhu. The region today known as Manchuria is located in northeastern China. At its heart is the Liao Valley and a diverse landscape where forest, steppe and agricultural lands overlap. For centuries, the dominant people of Manchuria had been the Jurchen. They were a sedentary people who made their living through fishing, hunting and agriculture. They also exported valuable merchandise like fur, pearls and ginseng to the more centralized and complex societies of Korea and China. Occasionally through history, the Jurchen were unified in dynasties like the Qin in the 12th and 13th centuries. While they were sedentary like the Koreans and Han Chinese, the Jurchen were also under considerable Mongol influence. During the Ming Dynasty, however, the Jurchen were politically fragmented. They were divided into 3 primary groups: the Wild Jurchen in the northern part of Manchuria and the Amur, the Haishi Jurchen around modern Harbin, and finally the Jianzhou Jurchen in the area of the Mudan River immediately north of Korea. They lived closest to the Liaodong Peninsula between Korea and China and often intermixed with Han Chinese and Koreans. During the early Ming Dynasty, the Ming state conquered Manchuria, which had been part of the Mongol Empire along with China. They never exerted as much political control of the region as the Mongols had done though, and after the 15th century their influence waned considerably, although they kept bestowing titles upon Jurchen leaders. By the 17th century, loose confederations among the Jurchen were starting to rise. The Jianzhou Jurchen were unified under Wang Kao and attacked the Ming, but was defeated by other Jurchen and handed over to the Ming, who had him executed. Even as the Ming power over the Jurchen was waning, they kept them at bay with this divide and conquer approach, where internal divisions prevented the Jurchen, who were expert horsemen and archers, from being a stable threat to the Ming. This changed with the rise of Nurhaci. Nurhaci was born in 1559 as a member of the Gyoro clan. During his childhood, he reportedly made a living selling ginseng at the market in Fushun, having lost his mother young. He also lived in the household of the Ming general Li Chengliang, who held the responsibility of guarding the northern border. Here, the young Nurhaci read classical Chinese literature like the Romance of the Three Kingdoms and the Art of War. His political career started early, when rival Jurchen Nikan Wailan killed his father and grandfather in 1583. With the aid of Li, Nurhaci took revenge upon Nikan Wailan and had him killed in 1587. After this, Nurhaci emerged as the most powerful among the Jurchen. Fearful of Nurhaci's growing power, a rival tribe, the Yehe, formed a coalition of 9 tribes against him. However, Nurhaci defeated them in 1593. Over the next 2 decades, he worked tirelessly to unify the Jurchen. He ordered the creation of a Jurchen script based on the Mongol one. He then subjugated the tribes one by one and tried to establish friendly relations with the Mongols. The last tribe, the Yehe, would not be fully subjugated until 1619. With the full unification of the Jurchen, Nurhaci proclaimed the later Qing dynasty in 1616 with himself as the emperor. In 1618, Nurhaci proclaimed 7 grievances against the Ming dynasty. It included their mistreatment of the Jurchen and their responsibility in the deaths of his father and grandfather. This worked as a declaration of war against the Ming and has often been regarded as being caused by Nurhaci's personal ambition. However, he also had a pressing need for a war against the Ming. The population of Manchuria had increased because of the unification, and the region was facing a food shortage. A bad harvest in 1618 threatened with famine, and for Nurhaci, the only way out was to attack the Ming for food. Immediately after declaring the war, Nurhaci attacked the trading city of Fushun in order to occupy its granaries. The defenders were surprised by the sudden attack of the Jurchen and surrendered after a few casualties. A Ming relief army tried to retake the city immediately after, but it was defeated. The Ming court in Beijing was shocked by the news, but plagued by infighting, corruption, and the disinterested Wanli emperor, it was slow to react. Only the next year was a massive army, reportedly numbering as many as 90,000 men, dispatched with the goal of occupying the Jurchen capital of Hetu Ala. This massive force was under the leadership of military commissioner Yang Hao and was split into 4 different forces who intended to attack Hetu Ala from 4 different routes. The first to attack was the West Route force, consisting of 30,000 men commanded by Regional Commander De Song. When De reached the city of Fushun, the Jurchen had already abandoned it. De occupied the city but grew impatient and marched forward after 10 days despite heavy snowfall. At the Hun River, he took 10,000 men across the river to attack Jurchen defenses. As they crossed the river, Nurhaci gave the order to break the dams of the river, and the men had to abandon their equipment to save their lives in the ensuing floods. That night, De attempted to split his forces to guard the important Sarhu Pass and the Jilin cliff where he camped. De's forces were completely surrounded, and the efficient Jurchen cavalry surrounded and destroyed them completely. De was killed during the fighting, and the Ming survivors had to flee while Nurhaci regrouped his forces. The North Route force, commanded by Regional Commander Ma Lin, soon heard about the demise of De and grew cautious. He unified with survivors from De's force and formed 3 fortified camps at Jiangjuayan, surrounded by cannons and trenches. Nurhaci soon attacked this camp and decided to focus on Ma's own camp. Nurhaci ordered an infantry attack to draw the attention of the Ming defenders, and they ambushed their flanks with his cavalry. The Ming soldiers panicked and their morale broke. Ma meant to escape, but half his force were killed and captured, and the other 2 camps soon fell as well. The East Route force, 30,000 men under Regional Commander Liu Ding, was supposed to move northeast from the Korean border. An attack on the main capital from the east. This force also included a Korean expeditionary force from Chosun, Korea, under Commander Kang Hong-rip. Liu experienced some initial success against the Jurchen scouting party, inflicting 3,000 casualties. However, Nurhaci sent him soldiers, claiming to be messengers from De's force, requesting him to speed up. Liu took the bait and marched his army faster into a valley, causing them to lose cohesion. As he was approaching the capital, the Jurchen ambushed Liu. The Ming withstood the first charge, but were completely shattered by the second one. Around 10,000 troops were killed, and Liu was killed among them. The Korean musketeers under Kang had wished to not participate directly in this conflict, but under these circumstances they were forced to. They performed well with their muskets before surrendering with little casualties. Afterwards, the South Route force under Li Rubai heard of the fate of the others and withdrew across Ming borders without engaging the enemy. Nurhaci had won a crushing victory over his enemy, and he immediately moved to capitalize. Ma Lin, who had commanded the North Route force, retreated to the city of Kaiyuan. Here he was attacked a few months later as the Jurchen captured the city and executed him. In smaller battles, the Jurchen also captured the towns of Dieling and Xisheng. On the back of his victory, Nurhaci could crush the last remaining internal Jurchen opposition against him. He also sent messengers to Korea demanding to know why they had supported the Ming. Since he intended to keep the Koreans neutral, he allowed most of the Korean prisoners to return home, and the Korean king Kwang Hai-gun sent a letter congratulating Nurhaci on his victory, not wishing to anger him. For the Ming, the battle had been a disaster. The general Yang Hao was arrested and later executed for his failure. The Liaodong Peninsula was now lost to the Jurchen, who could cut off overland contact between China and Korea. In our next episode, we will see how the Ming regrouped and prepared for their next battle as the ambition of Nurhaci grew. This has been Chinese history, and we will see you next time.